Everywhere at 5, the man who tried to strangle a random woman in a police station stood in front of a judge today for a competency hearing.
Daniel Carrillo pled guilty by reason of insanity, but it's up to a judge to decide if he can stand trial.
Everywhere at 5, Aria Janelle tells us how close he is to making a decision.
The judge didn't make any decisions on Carrillo's fate today, but after hearing from the doctor, he has a lot of different factors to take into account, including the way Carrillo acted in court. This is Daniel Carrillo crying in a Lorain County courtroom. He's facing attempted murder charges for this. In March of 2025, Carrillo walked up behind a woman in the Elyria Police Station with a belt in his hands, trying to strangle her. It was about 17 seconds later that officers rescued the woman, arresting Carrillo. On Tuesday, Dr. Kara Predmore walked us through the 2 psych evaluations she had with Carrillo, trying to determine if he was competent enough to stand trial.
He also became very emotional at times during the interviews, being upset by the topics that were being discussed, and had difficulty regaining his composure.
Something Carrillo displayed during the hearing, making faces and crying uncontrollably. Dr. Predmore even spoke to the family of Carrillo, trying to get a better understanding of his mental health. She was told he had a traumatic brain injury when he was 17 years old.
He just needed help in many areas of everyday life. He needed reminders to take his medications. The family did not trust him to use the oven or the stove without another family member present.
After being questioned by both sides, the doctor gave her recommendation that Carrillo needs to be sent to a psych facility to get treatment and did not think he could get better in the time the state allows before standing trial.
Court will take the matter under advisement and will issue an opinion.
The judge left the courtroom without making any decisions or setting another court date. Once either is made, we'll bring you the first alert. For 19 News, I'm Aria Janelle.